Good evening from Los Angeles. I'm Lawrence O'Donnell. Some liberal Democrats spent the day attacking the president for trying to make a deal with Republicans on taxes, which did not stop the president from making a deal with Republicans on taxes. After Senate Republicans and Democrats defeated two bills on Saturday that would not have extended the Bush tax rates for the wealthiest Americans, the president explained why he was negotiating with Republicans this evening.
But I'm not willing to let working families across this country become collateral damage for political warfare here in Washington. And I'm not willing to let our economy slip backwards, just as we're pulling ourselves out of this devastating recession. I'm not willing to see 2 million Americans who stand to lose their unemployment insurance at the end of this month be put in a situation where they might lose their home or their car or suffer some additional economic catastrophe. So as sympathetic as I am to those who prefer a fight over compromise, as much as the political wisdom may dictate fighting over solving problems, it would be the wrong thing to do.
But there is still a fight tonight, not between Republicans and Democrats, but between the president and the Democrats who feel he simply surrendered to Republicans. New York Congressman Anthony Weiner tweeted earlier, "Memo to our president. Why are we always punting on third down? Let's get our offense on the field." Joining me now, the frustrated gentleman from New York, Anthony Weiner. Thanks for joining us, Congressman Weiner. Congressman Weiner, you tweeted that President Obama was punting on third down. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think sometimes the president, who in his eagerness to try to get deals, to try to move the country forward, to his credit, I think sometimes he doesn't realize how many arrows he has in his quiver. I don't think he fights sometimes enough for the things he believes in. Compromise is not a vice. It's the way we all operate in Washington. I think it's the way the system's supposed to work. But the compromise and the deal is supposed to follow a vigorous fight, a vigorous competition of ideas. And sometimes it seems like the president bypasses that part of the process.
What exactly should the president have done differently in this tax cut fight?
I think what he should have done is said, look, my position is I want to provide tax relief for 97% of the American people. That's what I campaigned on. That's what the American people support overwhelmingly. And that's what we're going to do. And we are not going to allow the insistence of a millionaire's or a billionaire tax cut to slow that up. And I would have campaigned around the country. I would have taken on that fight. I would have welcomed that fight because the American people support his position. And frankly, he never did that part of it.
That's exactly what he did do.
I'm not saying that he...
I heard the speeches.
Oh, I didn't hear this. I got to tell you something. We had an interesting moment where when the House passed the $250,000 in South cut, they put out a release that it's great to see what the House did, but we stand ready to compromise wherever necessary. Look, I think that what the bottom line is the president has to realize that sometimes the process of fighting and standing up for what you believe in becomes an easier end at the end of the day. That too often he gives in too easily, and the American people simply want someone to fight for them.
Well, what about your leadership? Why didn't the House leadership have this vote before the lame duck session? The president was completely in favor of you guys having the leadership to go with this before the lame duck session, go into the campaign, having voted for it, having achieved it, or perhaps having failed to achieve it. But your leadership in the House refused, very emphatically refused, to take this tough vote during a congressional campaign year.
Well, I think that was a mistake. I think one of the things we learned going into this campaign is that we were too afraid of our own shadow, that we were so tied in knots about trying to keep this coalition in place or these blue dogs or these new Dems that we lost sight of the fact that there are some basic democratic values that we should have been fighting for, and that's fairness for the middle class and those struggling to make it. There's no doubt about it. The way we proceeded leading up to the election muddled whatever message that we had. But only the President of the United States can really make this fight. You have to be the president standing up and talking to the country to make something like this happen. And let me say one other thing. The president has to stop seeing vote counts as static things. They're not. The president can change vote counts by going out there and working the hustings and making it clear what our message is. Very few Americans today know what in his gut the president believes in.
Tell me what he could have said to Joe Lieberman to change Joe Lieberman's vote on the top tax rate, representing the state of Connecticut, where they have a lot of top tax rate payers. What could he possibly have done to change Joe Lieberman's vote. And by the way, Russ Feingold, who also voted against the Democrats.
Well, let me tell you something. For one thing, you don't take Joe Lieberman in and have a conversation with him over tea at the White House. You go to Connecticut. You go to the University of Connecticut. You fill up their stadium with people like you did during the campaign, and you make the case. You say to the people of Connecticut, every single one of the residents of the nutmeg state or whatever the heck it is, you're all going to get tax cuts. The only question is whether we're going to treat the $251,000 as tax-free, the millionth dollar as tax-free. That's the only question, or tax-reduced. He doesn't do that because I don't think he realizes that that's a way that you change a senator's vote. The same way it didn't happen during the health care debate, it didn't happen during the tax debate. And it's not because I think the president's venal. I want him to succeed. I'm not like Mitch McConnell. I don't want him to fail. So this is advice coming from someone who would follow his lead if he led that charge.
And the other 5 on that list, Joe Manchin and so forth, go to each one of those states. You think there was any way to get this new senator from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, to go with you on this vote?
Well, perhaps there was, but we're not even having the fight. You're asking the question is if you engage in the fight, you eventually have to make accommodations and compromise. Perhaps you do. Did I miss? Okay. But I seem to have missed the fight part of this, and I think that's what a lot of people are responding to tonight.
Well, I think the question is just what is fighting and what is realistic fighting and what is fake fighting. And I think there's been a lot of that game playing all year and a lot of these different legislative battles. I think people have come on this network and pretended to fight for things that they knew they were going to give up on all along. So I'm not sure what the difference is between pretending to fight and fighting. But let's consider what the deal is that seems to be emerging tonight from the White House with the Republicans. The deal seems to be a 2-year extension on the current rates for everyone, including the top tax rate. And then, in exchange for that, from the Republicans, a 13-month, over a year extension of unemployment benefits, as well as other tax breaks, including an expansion of the earned income tax credit, which is for the poorest people who file with the IRS. These, to me, look like some very significant achievements in the negotiating by the White House. Do you think this deal is worth it under the circumstances, given that there are at least 5 Democrats in the Senate who weren't going to vote for the Democratic version of this?
Well, putting aside that I haven't stipulated to the fact that there'd be 5, and I think if you made this fight there'd be fewer, but putting that aside, there are some very good things in this deal. I think, frankly, the pressure would grow on the Senate, and the pressure would grow on the Republicans. But I'm not going to quibble. I think the outcome isn't a terrible one. The only question is whether we could have navigated this battle better, and whether we could have put more pressure on the Republicans and gotten even more out. Let's face it, extending unemployment insurance is extraordinarily popular, and even in Republican states, it's unpopular to be standing in the way of that. So this idea that we got it is good, but I think that, frankly, the idea that it's something that we should have given up on a core principle for is probably overstating the case. I think that there are a lot of things in this package that are obviously very good that I like.
And just to clarify strategically, are you in the camp that says the president should have been willing to allow the rates to go up on January 1? If he couldn't get the deal he wanted, he should have fought all the way to the point of not getting a deal at all? Or are you simply saying there was more fight to be had here, nothing wrong with taking this all the way up to Christmas Eve?
I would have taken it even further. I would have taken it clear into January and say because of the Republicans, your taxes are going up because they wanted to put millionaires and billionaires ahead of you. Look, I'm in the camp that believes the pressure built on the people asking for the irresponsible, unpopular thing, which is the Republicans.
Carson Wiener, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you, sir.